So I want to make a video reply to JD Delay's video about destroying homeless camps. When you ended up having to go on that work sit and, apparently your job, what you were instructed to do was to go ahead and throw the entirety of, these homeless people's, all of their earthly possessions. And then we're supposed to go ahead and throw lye on the ground so that way if they were to go ahead and sleep under those bridges that they would end up getting burned, and you saying you don't care, you won't do that, and then putting you on a different work crew and working with the Department of Forestry. I gotta say, actually, for that, regardless of, assholery, got a lot of respect for you for that. You know, I remember for a while, keep in mind too, my health is completely fucked up. On my legs, I've literally got these lesions that, if you see right there on my arm, that actually swells up to be a boil that blows up to that big. On my leg, I've got one that's 3.5 inches long, by 1 inch wide. The doctor actually said it's a cyst, and it expands to the size of half a softball. Like if you were to take a softball, saw it in half, and then just epoxy it right onto my leg, that's how big it swells up to. It literally swells so large that the entirety of the center of it, the eye of the cyst, it's a permanent bruise because of how long with the medical negligence that I had to deal with that. It's actually permanently affected my mobility. Ultimately, it may end up resulting in amputation because of how extreme it is and the medical malfeasance and medical neglect, of, the intentional kicking can down the road. Yeah, as actually expedited, like sped up the timing for that potential medical intervention to happen. But, no special treatment when, despite the fact or how disabled you are. So after I ended up having surgery, which keep in mind the surgery that I had done was actually to go ahead and inflate the arterial walls while at the same time blocking off the, veins that ultimately weren't actually allowing blood flow to the lower half of my body. So we're talking my left leg is completely fucked. Ultimately there's actually nerve damage throughout the entirety of the leg as well as, damage to the ventricles. I think the diagnosis was deep vein thrombosis and May-Thurner syndrome. But, and that develops into thromboembolysis, which is basically those blood clots that end up forming, end up going through the bloodstream, end up causing, a lowering in oxygen that end up in embolisms as well as epileptic seizures. So it's partially neurological, partially cardiological. But even after the surgery and everything, one of the work requirements, literally I've had to, in the past, along the many jobs, had to go ahead and, use a chainsaw and actually help with breaking down, these thin trees to go ahead and, help with some, post harsh weather debris cleanup, as well as the factor that, with distributing food, as well as, actually had to go ahead and get boots on and actually help with stacking lumber, and keep in mind, throughout that, I was under heavy surveillance, so the factor of people having the attitude of don't want to work, all that, it's like, hey, when you're at your final days of being able to have mobility because you're about to have one of your limbs chopped off and you are still trying to milk whatever work you can out of somebody, and you give no fucks whatsoever about the factor that they're literally about to be losing a limb because of the conditions that were set. Like that's just a level of fucking heartless that I don't think people can calculate. So keep in mind, I already did everything that was expected of me, met every fucking requirement, for literal expungement even of my past, while at the same time, somebody trying to go ahead and use me for fucking indentured servitude and fucking slavery. Imagine having 20 years of fucking wages stolen from you. So, literally, this whole thing, there are a couple of different organizations that are actually working on the case that ties in with my case, between the American Civil Liberties Union, Southern Poverty Law Center, Institute for Justice, actually tried, getting assistance from Time Done as well as the Innocence Project, and keep in mind, part of the reason that, the circumstance ended up happening was because of the factor that when I had a representative payee, there was, I ended up going ahead and reporting about some embezzlement, and I clarified that the reason that I reported it was because of the factor that, stealing money and, equity and everything from me, whatever, I mean, I already understand. I've been an asshole so much of my life that, there's a lot of it that I brought on myself. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit back and go ahead and watch, this organization that's supposed to be nonprofit and supposed to be, a religiously, driven organization go ahead and steal money from people that, keep in mind, the factor that, they had clientele and a lot of clientele at that, with them not having much organizations that actually do the same thing that they do, apparently throughout the entirety of the state. I wasn't cool with sitting back and watching them going ahead and stealing money that people wouldn't be, that people would end up not being able to pay their medical bills. People wouldn't be able to get their actual medical care because of the way that, they fucked up, and were intentionally going ahead and, claiming to be a nonprofit while at the same time trying to go ahead and stack on exorbitant fees, apparently having exclusivity deals with specific companies, while at the same time not providing actual adequate sheltering that would actually pass standards. Like, for example, the place that I lived in, if you were to literally go lay on the ground and go look right at the side, the side of the door, you could actually look down right at the corner of the actual doorway, and it was completely eaten out by termite damage to the point where you could actually see the outside. So there was no actual insulation whatsoever. Like, the place technically was unlivable, while at the same time being expected to go ahead and be lived in. At the same time, it ended up getting burglarized, and I was expected to turn the other cheek.